10. Siren Murad. During a trip to Bulgaria in 2022, 25-year-old Siren Murad accidentally dozed off in the hot sun for a half hour. It's something many of us have done before. It typically results in an uncomfortable sunburn, but Murad was left with a deformed forehead. When she first woke up, she had the usual soreness that one could expect after falling asleep outside. Over the next day, though, her skin started to tighten abnormally, resulting in an unusual shrink-wrapped look like plastic. Murad initially decided against getting any medical attention after consulting her family and concluding that her condition would probably heal on its own. But it got worse. The next day, the sunburn was peeling, leaving Murad's forehead tanned in odd places with various blotchy shades of red and pink in others. The good news was that after the peeling came some serious pain relief. Thankfully, the damage wasn't permanent. It did teach the young woman a big lesson about the importance of wearing sunscreen, even in cases where you think you won't get burnt. She told her social media followers that she had simply forgotten to wear sunscreen that day, but it's safe to assume it hasn't slipped her mind since. 9. Lee Holderman. While bathing topless in Compo Beach, Connecticut back in 2019, 28-year-old Lee Holderman was confronted by an upset mother who had her young child in tow. The woman said she felt it was inappropriate for Holderman to sunbathe without clothes on at a public beach. An argument quickly erupted between the two and things got out of hand. Holderman allegedly became belligerent and pulled off the bottom of her swimsuit as well, exposing her back end. The mother reported the incident to police and made sure to mention that her child witnessed the entire exchange. In addition to behaving wildly inappropriately in front of a child, Holderman was also accused of being drunk in public. During questioning, she reportedly told police that she couldn't remember exactly what happened. But she apologized for her unruly behavior and turned herself in willingly to face the charges of disrupting the peace and risk of injury to a minor. 8. Gerald BV. 48-year-old Gerald BV from Houston, Texas was relaxing in a bedroom one night in early 2021. Meanwhile, in the living room, a family friend, Norez Hargrove, picked up a gun to take a closer look. At some point, Hargrove accidentally fired the weapon. The bullet traveled through the wall into the master bedroom, through a TV, and straight into PV's body. His wife was beside him when it happened. Sadly, Gerald died from his injuries. Hargrove was brought into the local police station for questioning. He told detectives that he found the gun after everyone went to bed and thought it wasn't loaded. Out of curiosity, he picked it up and pulled the trigger, which proved to be a massive mistake. There haven't been many updates on this unfortunate story since it first broke, but at that time, officials made it clear Hargrove would be facing a manslaughter charge. The outcome of the case is unclear though. 7. Nicole Fultz. One evening in fall 2022, 38-year-old Nicole Fultz and her husband Jeff decided to relax with some friends and family around a campfire in the backyard. They lived in Tarpon Springs, Florida. At one point during the night, Jeff went inside while Nicole kept the fire going. She put another log on the flames and reached for a nearby can of fuel. As she poured it, the flame from the fire traveled up the stream of fuel and reached the can before Nicole even realized what was about to happen. There was a huge explosion and she was instantly engulfed in flames. Thankfully, she was smart enough to stop, drop, and roll, as the age-old fire safety rule tells us to do. Nicole was rushed to the hospital with burns on 95% of her body. Unfortunately, saving her life was impossible, and after 3 days in treatment, she succumbed to her injuries. Her 11-year-old son also sustained second and third degree burns to 40% of his body, and he faces a long road to recovery, but at least he was lucky enough to survive the incident. After spending almost 2 weeks in the hospital, the young man returned home to keep healing. Jeff Fultz told local news station WTSP that he hoped the tragedy would serve as a lesson to others about fire safety. He said he doesn't want to read about another family going through a similar situation, and that his wife planned to turn their fire pit into a bird bath one day, something she'd always wanted in their backyard. 6. Marcelo Panchi. Marcelo Panchi was a well-known lawyer in Paraguay who made a name for himself with his heavy-handed approach against drug trafficking, money laundering, and other forms of organized crime. In one of his biggest achievements from recent years, he participated in the seizure of dozens of illegally obtained properties from a major criminal operation. Panchi's relentless pursuit of justice earned him a lot of favor domestically and internationally, including among the US government. But his intolerance for corruption and drugs, and his refusal to be bought off, also meant he was widely disliked by members of the criminal world. In fact, someone hated him so much that they assassinated him during his honeymoon in Colombia back in 2022. Panchi was relaxing on a beach when the killer shot him twice, ending his new marriage just days after it began. He was only 45 years old. Colombian authorities identified 6 co-conspirators and arrested 5, 4 of whom were given 23 years in prison. The 5th suspect is still awaiting trial, and the 6th killer remains at large. The US Department of State is dedicated to bringing this fugitive to justice and has offered a generous $5 million reward for any information that could lead to the 6th co-conspirator's capture or conviction. 5. Iwan Gwen. 49-year-old British man named Iwan Gwen was working as a surveyor in Ghana when he decided to ring in the 2022 New Year with a little time off work to bond with his family. During this time, he went to the Volta River for a leisurely ride on his jet ski. But his family realized something had gone terribly wrong when they could no longer see him. Several fishermen discovered Gwen's motionless body in the water just a few hours later and told local authorities, who concluded he must have fallen off the jet ski and hit his head on the way down. He was rushed to a nearby hospital where he was pronounced dead. An autopsy determined his causes of death as asphyxiation from drowning and/or blunt force trauma to the head after falling from the motorized vehicle. Nobody saw the unfortunate tragedy firsthand, but a nearly year-long inquest found no evidence of possible foul play. This was just one big accident with a terrible outcome. 4. Vladimir Marigov. As the owner of 2 major sausage processing factories, 54-year-old Vladimir Marigov was well known throughout Russia as the Sausage King. His empire raked in a sizable income and allowed him to enjoy a life of leisure, but it wasn't without problems. Marigov was going through a divorce when he started dating 36-year-old Sabina Gazieva. The pair were relaxing in the sauna at his estate outside Moscow one day in 2020 when a group of assailants came in and tied them up while demanding money. Sabina managed to escape through an open window and tell neighbors, who called the police. But law enforcement unfortunately didn't get to the property in time to stop the attackers, who shot the sausage czar with a crossbow and tortured him to extract information. The assassins fled into a nearby forest before officers found Marigov dead from blood loss with the murder weapon nearby. Investigators found the getaway car in the nearby village of Istra, which is a popular getaway destination for wealthy Russian civilians. They detained 2 possible suspects, including Alexander Mavridi, the man accused of firing the crossbow. Mavridi was held in pre-trial detention in 2021 when he managed to escape custody. Thankfully, he wasn't on the run for long. A public facial recognition camera in Moscow identified him, and he was quickly recaptured. Mavridi's alleged accomplice, Pavel Akhmedov, is also in custody. The 2 suspects have reportedly admitted to their roles in the plot against the Sausage King, and their cases are ongoing. 3. Lee. In early 2021, a 36-year-old woman with mental health struggles named Lee was relaxing at Washington Park in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, when 2 young men approached her, asking if she had any spare change. She said no, but the pair, later identified as Kamari Lewis and Kevin Spencer, didn't take no for an answer. They began to kick, beat, and torture the woman while a group of 9 onlookers stood by and watched, doing nothing to stop the attackers. The disturbing crime was captured on video, showing the assailants dragging Lee toward a nearby pond. They basically left the victim for dead. She died 3 days later in a hospital. The mother of a boy who saw the murder helped lead the police to identify the suspects. She told law enforcement that she saw a video of two young men beating a lady. One of the witnesses, whose DNA was found on materials related to the crime scene, ran investigators through the events that led to Lee getting injured. This, along with other evidence, was enough for authorities to charge Lewis and Spence with murder and other crimes. Lewis allegedly downplayed his role in the attack, while Spencer confessed during questioning. One of the suspects said that he never called for help since he thought Lee was already dead when they left. He also said that he didn't really care about her because he didn't know her. The case appears to be ongoing. 2. Philip Wayborn. 46-year-old Philip Wayborn had a demanding career as an IT executive for the Middle East division of a global company. In May 2022, he treated his family to a vacation and they traveled from the UK to Disney World in Orlando, Florida. During the trip, they spent a day at Epcot and went to a bar in the Yacht Club Hotel. After leaving, Wayborn mysteriously got sick and collapsed out of nowhere. He was rushed to the hospital, but his condition only got worse despite the life-saving efforts of medical personnel. Wayborn died, and a months-long inquest was launched to determine what went wrong during what was supposed to be a nice family trip away from the stresses of everyday life. A toxicology test showed that he had fatal levels of fentanyl in his system, leading experts to believe he fatally overdosed. Based on the circumstances, they don't think Wayborn intentionally took his own life, but that he unfortunately overestimated his tolerance for the drug, which has been claiming countless lives across the United States for years now. It's the same drug that killed the iconic pop legend Prince in 2016. Fentanyl is extremely potent, which is why it's so easy to accidentally ingest a lethal amount. It takes just 2 milligrams to kill a person, and an estimated million or more people have died from overdoses in the US over the last 23 years. Wayborn's untimely death is yet another reminder that the substance does not discriminate against class or any other demographic, and that nobody is truly safe from it. 1. Evelyn Marie Fisher Bamforth. A 32-year-old psychiatric nurse from Florida named Evelyn Marie Fisher Bamforth was kicking back and relaxing in the living room of her Miramar trailer home in 1980, more than 40 years ago, when her life was cut short. An intruder broke in and assaulted her after she got home from her shift at a local hospital. Fisher Bamforth was found dead, and her murder was unsolved for decades. Finally, in 2022, advances in DNA technology connected her neighbor, Ronald Richards, to the crime. Detectives had long suspected Richards, but lacked any concrete evidence tying him to the murder. At the time, he lived just 12 homes away from the victim, and it seemed as though the two had no prior relationship of any kind. By the time authorities were able to charge Richards, he was already in an Ohio prison for an unrelated crime. He's now in his 70s and will soon be extradited to Broward County, Florida to face the new charges against him. If convicted, there's a strong probability he'll never see freedom again. Evelyn's husband, John Bamforth, told local news station WSVN that he's glad to finally see his wife's killer arrested after spending 43 years mourning her unsolved case. On the night of the murder, he found his home surrounded by crime scene tape, law enforcement, and reporters. Bamforth said the couple's bed was at least half soaked in blood, an image he'll never forget as much as he'd like to. He explained that there's truly no such thing as closure in a tragedy like this, but that there is such a thing as justice, and he's eager to see the case through to the end. In a Facebook post, the Miramar Police Department described the murder as the oldest cold case the agency has ever successfully solved. Thanks for watching. Would you rather get called into work right as you're about to relax and watch a movie, or have 2 12-hour shifts in a row? Let me know in the comments below.